trading deadline is here. You understand? You know we're going to have big-time Brian Windhorst in the house to talk about that because there's a lot of stuff going on around the National Basketball Association. That's one thing to get into. The other, I know Jim Boeheim is a legend, but damn, his son, Buddy, he might be a legend in the making. They're both going to be in the house. And, of course, the one and only Ray Lewis. I would do the move. Going back and forth. But I'm sitting in my seat. I can't do the Ray Lewis imitation sit down. I would, though. The Hall of Fame is in the house. All that and more coming up. First Take. Holla at your boy. Damn show.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into First Take on this Friday Eve. Stephen A. kicking us off. There's a whole lot happening on the show today. Brian Windhorst with us. Windy, it's been too long, but good to see you over the screen. We got plenty to discuss with you. NBA trade deadline, 3 p.m. Eastern. Of course, Max Kellerman, Stephen A. Smith. I'm Molly Karam Rose. Fellas, let's get it. I also want to mention, I know you just said it, Stephen A., but Ray Lewis will be with us and Jim and Buddy Boeheim, so that'll be a lot of fun as well. Windy, talk to me. Who's the biggest name that could be dealt today?
The Raptors right now control pretty much the entire trade market because they have Kyle Lowry and they have Norman Powell, who is one of the more desirable role players. And those are the two guys who potentially could be the most affected guys get moved today. Now, as of yesterday, the Raptors weren't thrilled with their offers for Kyle Lowry. They're basically negotiating with only two teams, with Miami and with Philadelphia. And from what I can glean from people I'm talking to, neither one of them are putting the premium package that they could offer for Kyle Lowry. And that's frustrated the Raptors a little bit. And, you know, part of the issue is that Kyle Lowry wants a contract extension, or at least a new contract after this season, somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 million a year over 2 years. And that's an issue certainly for Philadelphia and could contribute to their hesitancy. But I think before we see anything major happen, we're going to see a Lowry trade. And the reason I think that'll happen first is that to do this deal for a guy who makes $30 million like Kyle Lowry does, it's going to have to be a 3 or 4 for 1 trade. Philly or Miami is going to have to send out 3 or 4 players for Kyle Lowry. The Raptors do not have enough roster spots to make that deal. So I suspect, and from what I've been told talking to other teams in the league, they will then potentially try to reroute some of the players that they receive out to a third team. And so that will take some time. And that's one of the things that's holding up some of the trades. But I expect Kyle Lowry to have a new address in either Miami or Philly by 3 o'clock.
Windy, always good to see you, buddy. I've missed you. Here's the question. I know we hear Miami. I know we hear Philadelphia. It's a two-part question. Number one, which team do you believe needs Lowry most of the two? And question number two, why are not the Clippers in the mix here as one of those primary teams, knowing how desperately they need a point guard?
So, Stephen A., the Clippers just do not have the ammunition to make the trade. They would need somewhere in the neighborhood of $24, $25 million in outgoing salaries. They have no first-round picks that they can trade, and they have no attractive young players that they can trade. Frankly, they just don't have anything that the Raptors are excited about, even though it would be great for them. And yesterday, there was some rumors going around that the Los Angeles Lakers were interested in trading for Kyle Lowry as well. But I frankly don't believe that that's true. I think that's a smokescreen thrown up by Toronto because they're trying to get better offers out of Miami and Toronto. And I know this is a little bit technical, so I apologize. But both the Lakers and the Clippers are hard capped. They have a hard cap that they could not go over. And so what that means is that they can't trade, you know, $23 million or $24 million in players and get back Kyle Lowry, who makes $30 million. They can't take that extra money. They have to trade $30 million in players to get back. And for the Lakers, that would possibly mean trading 3 or 4 rotation players. It's just not going to happen. It's not a realistic trade function. And the Clippers, the only player that they have who's young, who has any value, who would be interested in L.A. would be Luke Kennard. But Kennard signed a $56 million contract extension, and not everybody in the league likes that contract. So really it's about Duncan Robinson. Yes. So really it's about, right now, from what I am told, Duncan Robinson is in the offer from the Heat to Toronto. And Tyler Hero is not. And the Raptors would really like Tyler Hero to be in that deal, but the premium package is not being offered. And from Philadelphia, they are permitted to trade 21 and 23 first-round picks to this year's pick in 2023, Plus, they have Tyrese Maxey, their young guard out of Kentucky, and plus they have Matisse Thybulle. They would like, in Toronto, they would like all of those pieces. And from what I have been told, Philly has not been willing to put that whole package in there. So part of the reason for this delay is that Kyle Lowry is not getting, he's not drawing the offers. And part of it, Stephen A., is because there's only 2 teams bidding. And I think Philly could really benefit from him, but I'm not so sure they want to trade everything left they have in their trade bucket to get him.
Wendy, we heard the Knicks might be buyers, and then nothing major at the trade deadline. I'm looking at the Celtics and Danny Ainge's penchant for making moves, and the fact that they have these 2 dynamic wings, but they're not only competing for this year, they have to look forward at a conference that has a big 3 in Brooklyn, where Milwaukee and Philadelphia keep getting better. Is there anything at all like a sleeper move that is on anyone's radar for Danny Ainge and the Celtics?
So here's the thing with the Celtics. The reality is, I don't know if their ownership is gung-ho on going into the tax this season with this team, with this Eastern Conference, where they're looking at Philly and they're looking at Brooklyn. Because, even though it's a big market, the Celtics have been careful about spending in the past. And they're in a season where they're not having fans, they're losing money. Trading for a guy like Aaron Gordon would put them in the salary, into the tax, would limit what they could do going forward, would take multiple young players or first-round picks, plus eat up a lot of salary. And I just don't know if that's the bullet that they want to fire right now. And I'm going to tell you guys something. If and when Aaron Gordon gets traded today, because I think he's going to, people are going to be in their feelings, because my feel is that Aaron Gordon is not demanding a big package on the market. The Denver Nuggets are leading, as far as I've been told last night, and from what I've heard is being offered, it's not going to blow people away. And maybe Orlando doesn't do the deal because of it, but if he goes to Denver for a secondary starter and like a young prospect and like no first-round pick, the fans in Boston are going to be upset. There's going to be players, like Damian Lillard, who would love to have Aaron Gordon on his team, is going to be upset. There's going to be fans in Orlando who are going to be like, wait a minute, we heard Aaron Gordon was on and off the market for 2 years, and this is what you got? So I think there's a lot of dynamics pressing down the Aaron Gordon market, and it may leave the Celtics with some egg on their face if they let him go and don't make that deal.
Wendy, what team in the NBA right now do you believe absolutely positively needs to make a move? No matter what, they've got to find a way to make a move today. Who is that team?
The Clippers need a guard. And I don't know whether or not the Clippers can trade for a guard or if it's going to be something that they sign. But they need a guard. And I don't know. They won by 30 last night. There are times where they look great. But they have not been a good clutch team at the end of last year. They have not been a good clutch team this year. Defensively is an issue too. And so they made an offer for Lonzo Ball in the last week. That would be a very intriguing player for them to trade for. But I think that there's a number of offers that the Pelicans have for Lonzo, and it's not even clear to executives out there whether David Griffin is actually going to trade Lonzo Ball or he's doing like some vetting to see who might be interested in him in the free agent market this summer. So that would be a great pick. But again, the Clippers are not permitted to trade any first-round picks. They do have a couple of second-round picks that they can trade. But to get any player back who makes a meaningful salary, like, for example, let's just say the Pelicans wanted to trade Lonzo Ball to L.A., you're looking at probably having to trade Lou Williams. So that's a guy who's a key part of their rotation. And so they're just in a bind with how to be able to get a guard. And I know that teams who have talked to them in recent days have asked about whether they'd be willing to put Marcus Morris on the market because they just don't have much to trade. And look, it's a good problem to have. It's a first world problem because they have a couple of all-stars in their starting lineup who they're paying a lot of money. But I think the Clippers, if they're going to win the West, need some support in that perimeter.
Okay, fair enough. Lonzo, Gordon, a lot of potential big names on the move here. Wendy, you'll be back with us in just a bit. Again, the NBA trade deadline is today, 3 p.m. Eastern. Thank you. Fantastic information. We will be in touch with you soon, and I'm sure you'll have more updates for us. Stephen A. and Max, I want to get back to Kyle Lowry, though. Obviously, Wendy bringing it up that it looks like the Lakers, not likely. He mentioned Miami and Philly, but here's what Adrian Wojnarowski said in yesterday's trade deadline special. Kyle Lowry is very much available. Philly, the Miami Heat, there are a number of teams engaged. The Raptors, they're going to work with Lowry on where he might like to play if they're going to do a deal. But here's one team not to rule out, the Lakers. Now, meanwhile, Lowry talked about being on the trading block following last night's Raptors win. Take a listen. The unknown is always difficult regardless of the situation. Stephen A., do this for me. Let's pretend he's going to the Lakers. If that is to happen, does that make them a title favorite?
No, it does not. The only thing that's going to make the Lakers a title favorite is the complete health of Anthony Davis and LeBron James. Kyle Lowry has nothing to do with that. And that's not to cast any aspersions on Kyle Lowry. I've been covering Kyle Lowry since he was in high school in Philadelphia when I was writing for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and then he went to Villanova. He's a rough rider. He's rugged. He's a rugged defender. Obviously, he can make big-time shots, as we saw en route to him helping Kawhi Leonard capture a championship in Toronto with the Raptors against the Golden State Warriors a couple of years ago, although we all know they probably would have got swept if Kevin Durant was healthy. At the end of the day, Kyle Lowry, I apologize, is a damn good basketball player. This is not to cast any aspersions on him. But when you look at what is transpiring in Brooklyn, New York, with that three-headed monster, assuming they show up to instead of all three taking a night off, okay? Even though Kevin Durant's injured, and I understand that. The point is, if they're on the court together and healthy, they're going to be the favorites. Nobody is going to be the favorites above them unless Anthony Davis is healthy, which I don't believe is going to be the case, which is why I raised that flag, Max, yesterday when I talked about him and Kevin Durant, well, more so Kevin Durant than him, being out a bit longer than we expected. I think there's something suspicious going on. I don't think either is going to be 100% as it pertains to Anthony Davis, since that's the topic of discussion right now. If you recall, when he first went down, I said, excuse me, I don't anticipate him being 100% at any point in time this season. And I think that's what's going to be required for the Lakers to be expected to repeat as champions. I don't think that's going to be the case, and that's why I say Kyle Lowry or anybody, I don't give a damn if it's Kyle Lowry, Lonzo Ball, it doesn't matter. If Anthony Davis and LeBron James are not healthy, the Lakers are not the favorites, period.
I see it differently. Surprise, surprise. I think it's possible that AD is never completely healthy this year, but the same thing is possible for Durant.
Yeah.
Okay? So I'm going to assume for a second that everyone's going to be healthy.
Okay,
that the Lakers are at full strength and the Nets are at full strength, because that's really what we're talking about when we look at these two teams.
Fair enough.
And I have come around to thinking that even if the Lakers are totally healthy, they can't beat the Nets as is. I mean, they can't is strong, but I'm taking the Nets.
So you've come
I'm
around
taking the Nets.
My way of thinking, you've come around.
I'm taking the Nets, based on what I've seen. James Harden's playing out of his mind. So is Kyrie Irving. You add Kevin Durant, who's the best player on the team, I don't think they'll be able to be stopped, because there are three of those dudes. Lakers got two of those dudes. Of those dudes, right? Who's Kyle Lowry? Like, Dennis Schroeder's a nice point guard. I think he's played so well, he's an average starting NBA point guard, which is a great thing. That means out of 30 teams, you're in that 15-ish range. A lot of really good point guards. It means you're a good player. Kyle Lowry's better than that. Because Kyle Lowry now has championship experience. Wasn't always that way. You talk about how he's a rough rider and this and that. By the way, if he wound up in Miami, it'd be a reunion with Dragic. But remember when they were on the same team, who's better? We don't know. Kyle Lowry, throughout his career, to me, had issues in the playoffs. And Masai Ujiri challenged him when he got to Toronto, and I think made him a better player. And with reps and experience in the playoffs, he got to be a championship player. And as you keep pointing out, what Kawhi needs to do, a championship leader, because he was the vocal leader of that team, right? That's what the Lakers need. They need a big three to counteract the big three in Brooklyn. That's really the only big three in the league. Kyle Lowry is just good enough, given his championship pedigree, given what he can do on a nightly basis, to be considered the third wheel in a legit big three. Like, people sleep on this. Last year, the Lakers had a big three because playoff Rondo is an all-star. He's not an all-star. Rondo ain't even very good, I think, most of the year. Playoff start, that's an all-star. So the Lakers had Rondo to go with LeBron and AD. Don't have that anymore. And maybe Schroeder can be that. Maybe, well, let's see if he can elevate, but we haven't seen it yet. We know Kyle Lowry can. The Lakers, if they got Kyle Lowry, would once again become my favorites to win it all.
Not for me. And I don't disagree with how you described Kyle Lowry. I'm with you there. I think he's a better version of Dennis Schroeder. I don't disagree with that. I definitely think he's a slight upgrade in that regard. He can make big-time shots. He can defend, etc. But I think that when you look at the Brooklyn Nets, this is lethal weapon 3. That's what it is. When Kyrie, James Harden, and Kevin Durant are on the court, it's lethal weapon 3. There's only one trio that can do something with that lethal weapon 3. And that's if there was another KD on Golden State with Steph Curry and a healthy Klay Thompson. That is the only threesome that I believe can compete or exceed what this lethal weapon 3 can throw at you. They're just too sensational. And I think that they're too potent offensively, particularly from the perimeter and particularly from the free throw line. As great as LeBron is, and we all know that LeBron is the best, here's the reality. He's somewhat of a liability at the free throw line, particularly when you go compared to Kyrie, James Harden, and Kevin Durant, who all shoot better than 85% from the free throw line, okay? They're money from the line. We got to pay attention to that. Anthony Davis, sure, there's no answer for him in the interior, even though he's capable of taking you outside. But he ain't Kevin Durant, okay? So when you look at LeBron with an Anthony Davis and a Kyle Lowry, even though that is a big 3, and I definitely would respect Kyle Lowry by highlighting that, it doesn't compare to Brooklyn, which means, to answer the question directly, they wouldn't be the favorites. He doesn't propel them to favorite status over lethal weapon 3 in Brooklyn.
I think he does because at least, look, LeBron is the best, and we've seen that it takes more than one superstar to counteract them. Mm-hmm. And AD, if fully healthy, is a whole, and it's a matchup problem every night.
Right.
They need a third guy. It doesn't need to be as good as Kyrie.
For the purposes of this show,
yeah,
let's be very, very clear where I stand. If Kevin Durant is healthy, then I modify my position about LeBron being the best in the world.
Well, we have
Let me be very, very clear.
We have to wait and see.
If Kevin Durant is healthy, he's a problem.
Yep. We have to wait and see.
You understand? And
I don't know if KD is healthy. He's the best player in the world. Better than LeBron.
He's a problem for LeBron. He's a problem for Anthony Davis. I'll tell you this.
He's never been better than LeBron so far.
We beg to differ at finals, but I understand because he had Steph and Klay. But let me say this to you. Yeah. KD, I promise you this, he's averaged 30 on better than 50%.
He's averaging 30 right now, probably somewhere.
On better than 50% shooting. Look, I promise you that.
Here's the issue with the Nets. It's never happened before, ever, that you have 3 guys who can all get their own shot at historically elite levels and hit them from anywhere at historically elite levels. In the paint, finishing, from the free throw line, three-point range, mid-range, doesn't matter where. The Lakers need more ammunition, even if healthy, to counteract
that. Which is why they wouldn't be the favorites over Brooklyn.
No, Kyle Lowry's pretty good. Kyle Lowry's just good enough to be the third wheel in the big 3.
Harden hasn't unleashed. He's busy trying to play point guard. He hasn't unleashed his offensive arsenal in Brooklyn.
He hasn't even played.
Excuse me, you understand what I'm saying? It's not like Harden can't do more. He could, and he's been fantastic already. Keep sleeping.
Who's sleeping?
I'm just saying.
By the way, guys, Kyle Lowry turns 35 today, so happy birthday to him. No active player ever has been traded on his birthday.
He's a good dude. He really is.
We'll see what city he's celebrating it in. That's for sure. It looks like he's got quite a few options, teams that are interested. Breaking news for you. Our Adrian Wojnarowski tweeting this, hot off the presses. Here's the deal. The Bulls land Nikola Vucevic and Al-Farouq Amino for Otto Porter, Wendell Carter Jr., and 2 first-round picks. Huge addition for Chicago, who remains in pursuit of Lonzo Ball. The Magic are moving toward a rebuild now with the Aaron Gordon deal on deck. Mr. Smith, you are up first. Talk to me.
This is big time. This is big time. Because, see, Vucevic can play. That's number one. Number 2, you kept Zach LaVine. Marketing hasn't gone anywhere yet. I like his promise. And so when you look at that, the fact that Billy Donovan's your coach and some of the things that you're doing there, clearly the Bulls are trying to make some noise in terms of upgrading their roster. Gar Forman, John Paxson, they struggled a lot in the latter years before they departed. The bottom line is what you're looking at right now is a Chicago Bulls team that has put everybody on notice that we're trying. We're trying to do it because I love Zach LaVine. Love Zach LaVine. I think Zach LaVine is a star in this game. When you consider his athleticism, his hops, he can shoot the J. He's averaging 28. Yep. He's averaging 28 on better than 50% shooting and better than 42% shooting from three-point range. Zach LaVine is a star that has not been noticed enough because the franchise has been absolutely positively pathetic. But I think this is a move strongly in the right direction. I love this move by the Chicago Bulls. And let me just say this as an aside. Otto Porter, I must confess, the only time, and it's not to knock him, I haven't seen much of him since he departed from Washington because, damn it, he hasn't done much. But here's the thing about Otto Porter. It's pretty sad. When the first thing you think about when you think about Otto Porter is the Shaq and the Fool moment when he was standing on the wing and he forgot and the defender ran all the way to the. This is when Randy Whitman was coaching the Wizards and the guy he was defending ran all the way to the other side of the court, Molly, before Otto Porter realized that he was going for right in front of him. It is my all-time favorite moment of Shaq and the Fool with the crew. Look at Shaq and the Fool. Google it with him, Kenny.
That's saying a lot. That's a great segment.
And Ernie Johnson, the great Ernie Johnson, class personified. Even he couldn't stop laughing. And Kenny Smith's always trying to find something. He always trying to find a beautiful, just a
You were here in studio passing the phone around. Look at this. Look at this.
A silver lining. And Kenny Smith was like, we got to see that again. That's how funny it was. I'm just telling you. That's what I think about when I think about Otto Porter, okay? Not his game. Not his game. That appearance on Shaq.
I don't think about that with Otto Porter. I think about the danger in when a guy has a limited role and you see what he can do. Paying him thinking if you expand the role, he can do that over 35 minutes, more and more.
And he clearly.
And he was, but he's valuable if you use it back then.
If you use it right. If you use it right.
Vucevic is an enormous move. And you know what it indicates about Chicago? Because he's got about 30 years old now.
Yes.
It means that they're trying to win now. I know they have a sub-500 record. But when you look at the talent on the team, and you named it, marketing was, you knew he was going to be good out of that draft, and he is, and he does it with size. And obviously, Zach LaVine is like bordering in a weird way because he's under the radar on superstardom, considering how efficiently he can score, plus his athletic ability. His athletic ability is as good as anyone's ever, and he can shoot now. And as you said, he's averaging close to 30 a game. You're bringing in a center. It's not that he doesn't have a weakness, but with such a good overall game with size, he can score, he can pass. His defense kind of reminds me of like James Harden's, by reputation, not good, but if you watch him, actually pretty good. I think he's a pretty good defender. I think he's just an excellent all-around player that would work like on any team. And the Bulls, you put him with Zach LaVine, you really have something, not just the rest of this year, but going forward.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And this is not good news for the Knicks. You understand? Because I'm loving what I'm seeing from my Knicks. They're committed to their culture, not necessarily expected to make any moves, even though they're talking about Victor Oladipo. That would just be a cap thing because he's in the last year of his deal, paying him $21 million. He's looking for a new contract. I'm not sure that's the right way to go. But with the Bulls, by making a move like this, they're looking at the middle of the pack in the Eastern Conference. We got Philly and Milwaukee on a separate level. We look at Miami. They've been playing well as of late. They're inching towards there. Everybody else is in the middle, you see? And Chicago is saying, excuse me, we're trying to make top four.
No, this tells me also, not just for this year, but going forward, they're not done. They're going to do something else major because they're putting something together here.
Yeah, they're putting something together. I like the move.
Well, let me get to the team in New York that actually put something together that can really do something, and that's not the Knicks. That would be the Nets. So the Brooklyn's Big Three did not suit up last night in the Nets' blowout loss to the Utah Jazz. James Harden sat out with neck soreness, but earlier in the day, Charles Barkley made news with some high praise for Mr. Harden.
I know I'm going to probably get criticized for saying this. This guy might be the best basketball player in the world. I mean, he might be the best player in the world. I've always thought he was the best offensive player. He wasn't as great as Michael and Kobe. But I said a few years ago, and people laughed at me, he's the best offensive player I've ever seen. But right now, no disrespect to LeBron or Giannis or anybody, James Harden might be the best basketball player in the world, period.
Best basketball player in the world, Max Kellerman. Can the Nets win a title with Harden as their best player?
Yes, they can. I mean, he's got to come up big in the playoffs, which he hasn't done yet. He hasn't just maintained himself, let alone elevated when it matters most. But just because you haven't done it in the past doesn't mean you can never do it. Look at Clayton Kershaw for the Dodgers this year. And he was an all-time choker. He got it together, right? Peyton Manning was an all-time choker in the playoffs, like in terms of where he fell from. You know, and then eventually he beats Tom Brady in the AFC Championship game and with the money on the line, and he played really well. James Harden can do it, but here's what's more important. I know what you're thinking, like he ain't better than Kevin Durant. And by the way, I know what Charles Barkley's talking about. A couple weeks ago, I said for the first time watching James Harden in his career, when my eyes are on him, I think that's the best player in the world. Might be, right? That's his overall game is just out of control right now. He's playing such great basketball. He can be the best player on a championship team, on this team, even with KD on it. Know why? Because this Nets team is so lethal that if KD comes back as 80% of himself, they're still going to win a championship. KD at 80%, let's say, is a Paul George level player. Yep. You add a guy like that to what they can bear. Do you understand? When Harden and Kyrie are together, they almost never lose. They set the West Coast on flames on that road trip. 5-0, playing excellent teams. They almost never lose when Harden and Kyrie. Now you're going to add even an 80% KD. You can win the whole thing. And guess what? On that team, on a team with an 80% KD, the best player will be James Harden. Yep, I think it can happen.
I don't. And I think James Harden is absolutely, positively fantastic. And he's worthy of MVP consideration. And he's having a stellar year. But in order to beat LeBron and AD, because I'm going to think positive that they're both going to be healthy. Obviously, everything is contingent on health. But I'm going to be positive and think they're going to be healthy. There's nobody outside of Brooklyn that's going to beat the Los Angeles Lakers. And the only way Brooklyn is going to beat the Los Angeles Lakers is if Kevin Durant is healthy. If Kevin Durant is not healthy, Kyrie Irving and James Harden is not beating LeBron James and Anthony Davis. It will not happen. It's just that simple to me. And so, matter of fact, they might not even get out of the East because you know what? We got to take a pause for a second and give some love to the Milwaukee Bucks. Yeah. I mean, the Milwaukee Bucks have been balling, okay? They won 13 of their last 14. Yeah. I think they won like 7 or 8 straight. Giannis is averaging 29 and 11.
Defend, yep.
You know, I mean, look at their defense. Look at their perimeter shooting. Look at the additions that they've got in Drew Holiday. Now you got P.J. Tucker there. You still got the rest of the crew there. I'm not sleeping on Milwaukee at all. And Philadelphia, let's face reality. When Embiid comes back, they're going to be incredibly formidable. We can't summarily dismiss them. So I don't know if Brooklyn will even get out the East without Kevin Durant. Now, with Kevin Durant, there's nothing to talk about. They'll beat everybody.
Okay, but let's say you take my scenario. KD comes back, because remember, just Kyrie and James Harden are impossible, right? KD comes back, but he's not fully himself. In other words, he's great, but Harden is better than that version of KD. Do they win the championship? Because I say yes.
If Harden's
at that level, KD, yes.
Harden's better than what? I don't understand.
In other words, KD comes back as a version of himself that's not 100%. It's still a great player, but it's not the best KD. Harden's better than the best KD.
I'm not saying that KD is required to be 100%.
Well, wouldn't Harden be better than that dude?
No. If KD was at 85, 90%, that's still better than Harden.
I don't think so. Not than this Harden.
Oh, yeah.
Not than this Harden.
But listen, you got to remember, Harden is running the show, and we're seeing something totally different from him, and I totally get that. But when they're 3 on the court together, man, they're like this. Okay, it's your turn. Okay, it's your turn. That's all it is. It's playground. I mean, they're toying with people because they're so lethal offensively. Harden runs the show when KD is not on the court. Yep. When KD and Kyrie are on the court with them, your turn.
By the way,
your turn, my turn. All right, let's get Joe and Jeff involved in TLC. Let's get in Bruce Brown. Let's get them involved a little bit.
Claxton's coming back.
Okay? Yeah.
By the way, I mean, like they're going to be impossible.
Impossible. It's possible. KD only need to be 85%.
Yeah. Harden, by the way, think of every player who ever lived who combined this level of passing and floor generalship, right, with this level of shooting. Ever. Yeah. Ever. Who combined those two things?
Harden
I know what Charles Barkley means.
Harden is special. Kyrie has been special this year. You can rely on him to play. When he plays, he's been absolutely sensational. And KD, again, I'm still concerned about his health. But he comes back. He's 85, 90%. It's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
Parties
it's a
over.
wrap.
It's a wrap. It's a wrap.
All right, fellas. Do you remember today's the trade deadline, March 25th, 3 p.m. Eastern? I have updates for you. Brian Windhorst is going to join us in his line, yo. Kyle Lowry has been at the center of trade deadline conversations with our Adrian Wojnarowski, saying the following. Lowry is very much available. Philadelphia, the Miami Heat. There are a number of teams engaged. The Raptors, they're going to work with Lowry on where he might like to play if they're going to do a deal. But here's one team not to rule out. That is the Lakers. On that note, we bring back our Brian Windhorst in Windy. I understand there's a little action happening. So what's the latest here? Break it down for us.
Here we go, Molly. We're full speed ahead. The action is rolling. The Toronto Raptors have let people know this morning that the two teams in the lead for Kyle Lowry are the Philly 76ers and the Lakers, with Philly in first position right now. That puts the Heat in third place. Kyle Lowry is preparing to be traded to the 76ers. Now, in talking to executives around the league, they believe that this is a last-ditch move by the Raptors to get Toronto to get Miami to improve their offer. The last I had heard, Duncan Robinson was in the deal, but Tyler Hero was not. And only the Raptors know whether or not getting Tyler Hero would change their viewpoint. One of the factors here, guys, is that Kyle Lowry, he was 35 today. His camp has let it be known to any suitors out there that he's looking for a 2-year contract in the neighborhood of $50 million this offseason. So you don't want to pay a lot for him in terms of assets if he's going to walk on you. And so you're not just trading for him, but you're trading for him knowing that you may have to give him, a guy in his mid-30s that kind of money this offseason to keep him. So that's a factor here. So Philadelphia fans, you're closer than you were to Kyle Lowry than you were last night, but it's not done because Miami still has a window. Let's see how this plays out.
Wendy, work with me on this particular situation. I'm going to be a touch long-winded here, but listen to the way I'm going. On Miami's end, I'm not giving up Tyler Hero nor Duncan Robinson personally, and it's not a matter of Kyle Lowry not being better than Duncan Robinson, but Duncan Robinson is young. He's a sniper with tremendous promise. I'm not giving him up. That's number one. I look at Philadelphia, and as much as I love Kyle Lowry with Doc Rivers in Philadelphia, if you give Kyle Lowry the ball as your point guard, what does that do with Ben Simmons, who refuses to shoot a perimeter shot? That's a question mark for me as well in terms of taking the ball out of his hands. And then in the case of the Los Angeles Lakers, who are they talking about giving up to get a Kyle Lowry? Or what are they talking about to give up to get a Kyle Lowry?
Yeah, so the offer that it would take something in the neighborhood of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Dennis Schroeder, and Wesley Matthews. That's the type of trade they would have to make. I can't say for sure that's the exact offer. But the interesting thing there is the Lakers have had talks with Dennis Schroeder about a contract extension. They have not been able to reach an agreement. And Toronto is one of the teams that is believed to be interested in Schroeder come this summer. So this would be sort of a flop out of Schroeder for Lowry, and then you sign Lowry and not Schroeder. Whether or not you think that's a good move or not is debatable. The thing with Duncan Robinson, he's also a free agent. And, he may command, with a three-point shooter like this, he may command something in the neighborhood of 18 to 20 million a year. So you may be deciding if you're Miami, whether you want to pay Kyle Lowry that kind of money or whether you want to pay Duncan Robinson that kind of money. But I have to say that this is sort of what we expected in these talks. We expected it to be sort of intense with a game of chicken coming down to try to juice the offers. Because as of last night, it just didn't look like Philly and Miami had put forth their best offers possible. And whether or not Philly has changed it or not, I'm not sure. Whether or not Miami is willing to increase it or not, I'm not sure. Whether Toronto truly believes what they're putting out there, I'm not sure. It's all a bluff game right now, but that's the information that's coming out of Toronto.
Daryl Morey versus Masai Ujiri. I mean, GM's got to be wary of dealing with either one of those guys because they seem to win a lot of trades. Meantime, by the way, I bet you THT is, and I don't believe there's a Lakers deal, but if there is, I bet you Masai is looking at THT. What is this Lonzo Ball news?
So the Chicago Bulls making this big move for Nikola Vucevic today. As you guys just mentioned a minute ago, major move also signals a fire sale in Orlando. Woj has already reported Evan Fournier may be headed to Boston in addition to Vucevic going out. So now watch Chicago and Lonzo Ball. Chicago is ticketed to have in excess of $20 million in salary cap space this summer. But now by taking on Vucevic and Al-Farouq Amino, they will not have salary cap space. So if they want Lonzo Ball, they get his rights, today is the day that they need to get him. And they have been in talks with the Bulls, and they still have the ability to do that. They still have the assets left to make that type of deal.
Which assets?
If not Lonzo Ball. Well, they have Lauri Markkanen, and they have other picks that they can offer as well. Markkanen's also a free agent to be. The other thing I would watch if you're the Bulls, I have heard within the last 24 hours there's been some conversations with the Bulls and the Trailblazers on Gary Trent Jr., like Lonzo, also a restricted free agent to be. Again, I would watch for Lauri Markkanen in one of those possible deals or elsewhere. But the Bulls, I do not think, are done. And Lonzo, I'm sure, is watching this very closely. I do think there's some significant interest in Lonzo in the Bulls. I think he maybe thought of it as a free agent destination this summer, but now the things have changed with this big trade. Yeah, but Chicago, even with Lonzo, they wouldn't go but so far. If you Lonzo, man, it's a damn shame you can't get to the Clippers because, my God, do they need him. They need him bad.
Lonzo on the Bulls, they're building something.
Have made an offer, Stephen A.
The Clippers? I'm sorry?
The Clippers have made an offer for Lonzo Ball, but they're very limited in what they can offer. Basically, it would be expiring contracts and second-round draft picks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the Lakers, Wendy? Anything there?
So keep an eye on the Lakers. Obviously, they're trying to be aggressive to upgrade. One guy to keep an eye on Terrence Ross, a high-quality backup with the Orlando Magic. If Vucevic and Aaron Gordon are for sale and Fournier is for sale, then Terrence Ross might be for sale too. Terrence Ross was formerly represented by Lakers GM Rob Pelinka, and the Lakers, I think, would have some interest in him. And he's been on the Lakers list in the past, so keep an eye on the Lakers maybe trying to see if Orlando is how hard they want to sell.
All right. Let's go to the Celtics now, guys, here. Wendy, sit tight here on this one. So it's not looking great for the Boston Celtics, who have lost 10 road games, in an 11-game span for the first time since 2014. They're currently in the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. Stephen A., what trade must the Celtics make to ensure a playoff appearance?
Well, to me, it's Aaron Gordon. I like Aaron Gordon with the Boston Celtics. I like Aaron Gordon with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I think they need something like that. You tried it with Gordon Hayward, and obviously he was coming back from that nasty injury he suffered in his very first regular season game as a Boston Celtic in Cleveland. I was there. It was a real nasty injury. It's good to see him back in the league and doing some real decent things down in Charlotte right there. But I look at Aaron Gordon as a skywalker. I think that he's got a lot of athletic talent, and I think you pair that with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, I think you can do some things. You can end up being one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the Eastern Conference, which is exactly where Boston should have been. I don't know what the hell has been going on with them, even with Tatum and Brown. They have no business being 2 games under 500 at this point in the season and being an 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. I don't know what the hell is going on, but I definitely think that Aaron Gordon would be an upgrade.
If Gordon's shot ticks up a little bit, he's a very, very good player. But, Wendy, to my way of thinking, the Celtics are now in a conference with the Brooklyn Nets Big Three. There is no permutation where you just add a good piece and you're even going to compete with that team. Forget that. The Bucks are loaded. The Sixers are loaded. To me, it seems like this Vucevic deal that was just made is the kind of deal they need for a big-time big, a modern big, a Porzingis or someone like that, although Mark Cuban said he wouldn't be available. Karl Anthony Towns, who's not, he had 1 winning season in his career, not in a great situation there. They got to put together a package and move heaven and earth to put a piece like that with these 2 forwards, and then they can compete in the East. Is there any rumbling of any major move for a piece like that by anyone, let alone the Celtics?
Yeah, I think the Celtics have had talks about acquiring Fournier and Gordon from the Magic. But as you mentioned, Max, they have to evaluate what their chances are with that team. Can they beat Philly or Brooklyn or Milwaukee? I think Miami has to ask the same question. If we give up all of these assets for Kyle Lowry, does our core beat Philly and Brooklyn? And maybe they do. Jimmy Butler certainly believes he can beat anybody on any day. But I think that the salary cap and tax is an issue for the Celtics. It was one of the reasons they were reluctant to do a Gordon Hayward pure sign and trade. They were keeping an eye on their salary. And I think that's a factor here. The Fournier move, I do think, will put them in a luxury tax. We'll see what else might go back to Orlando in that deal. But Aaron Gordon, the Denver Nuggets, have made an offer that has a decent chance. And like I said to you guys earlier, this is a key moment for Orlando. The moves that they make today will set where they're going and their foundational future. And so if you're negotiating with Orlando right now, you're negotiating with young players and draft picks, and you have to have something that they like. And so that is certainly a factor, in how this might play out. And I also just heard another thing I'll just give you guys because I just heard it. Watch for, I just heard about some talks between the Clippers and maybe acquiring Rajon Rondo from the Atlanta Hawks under discussion.
Well,
they should have had him at the beginning of the year.
They were saying they couldn't afford him. He had to go to Atlanta to get his money, but that's who they originally wanted.
Playoff Rondo.
So things are moving now, guys. I think in the next couple of hours we're going to see quite a bit of movement. Whether or not there's a bigger star than Vucevic traded, we'll see. But you've got the Lakers trying to make moves. For the Clippers, the Nuggets. The 76ers, there's a lot of contenders trying to make moves.
Your thoughts real quick about how the Sixers would utilize Kyle Lowry and whether or not that would have a negative impact on Ben Simmons. Your thoughts?
Well, it's multi-layered because obviously he's a terrific wing defensive player. He's a pressure player. He's a guy who can deliver. He's a leader. But it gives the Sixers a two-level approach. They could play this postseason with Kyle Lowry and see how it goes. And then if they don't think that this team's a championship team, I mean, maybe they win the title. I don't know. It certainly helps them getting a championship level player. But also it opens the door to maybe them looking at the market for Ben Simmons again this summer. Because if you have Kyle Lowry in-house, while he's not your long-term solution at point guard, he does enable you to think about maybe what kind of big fish you could maybe go out and get with Ben Simmons because you've got Lowry there. Let me give you an example. I'm not saying this would happen. An example is maybe they go and see if Ben Simmons could land them Bradley Beal. And if you have Kyle Lowry in-house, all of a sudden that's a very seamless transition. So it gives you sort of two bites at the apple. But still, I don't think Daryl Morey is in the mood to overpay here. So I don't think he's going to offer all the picks and all the young players. I think he'll make his offer and hope that it's better. And if he doesn't get Kyle Lowry, he may make another move, but he likes his team.
Wendy, great info by you. Thank you so much for being with us. And we know you'll continue to be all over the network today. We'll talk to you soon.